Right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our latest Ask the Leaders Facebook live Q&A. My name is Councillor Andrew Waller, and I'm the Executive Member for Economy and Strategic Planning. This week, we're delighted to be joined by representatives from the business sector, and the panel will be discussing your questions and comments about the support and the government budget announcements, funding, training and support for staff and skills. Before I go on and let the panel introduce themselves, I'd like to once again thank everyone in the city, residents and businesses for their incredible efforts in driving the rates of the virus down across the city. This last year has been extremely challenging for many local businesses, and I know that a lot has been asked of everyone in the city, and we're extremely grateful for all your hard work. As a council, we are here to support you in the best way that we can, and we've been working with partners since the very start of the pandemic to listen to businesses and respond to the challenges that they face. This has covered everything from free local advertising and processing payment licenses for cafes to run our own small business grants scheme, and now developing mental health support packages. We've also been giving local businesses a voice in Westminster, lobbying with partners to get support extended, most notably to self-employed people, and also to businesses with rateable values over £51,000. With the lockdown phasing out in place for the coming weeks and months, there will be a new challenge ahead, and we're working with the businesses across the city to make sure that we repeat the success of last summer and the reopening there. So we'll be doing everything that we can to allow businesses to open and support jobs whilst keeping people safe. Whilst there's still some time to go until most businesses can reopen their doors, we will make sure to keep sharing updates about what residents and businesses can expect and what support remains in place as they look towards the reopening and recovery. Although the coming weeks will present new challenges for us all, it's crucial that we continue to work together and support each other. So I'd like to introduce the panel tonight. So if we work around, I appreciate after a year of Zoom, we realized that it's a different way of presenting the screen. So if we start with Nigel.
Hi, I'm Councillor Nigel Ayre. I'm the Executive Member for Finance, Performance and Major Projects.
And then Carolyn.
Carolyn Frank, I'm the Development Manager for Federation of Small Businesses, and I cover York and North Yorkshire.
Amanda.
Hi, I'm Amanda Selvaratnam. I'm at the University of York and have responsibility for our engagement with businesses.
And Neil.
Hi, I'm Neil Ferris. I'm the Corporate Director for Place within the City of York Council.
Right, so that brings us on to the questions tonight, some of which have been sent in advance, and we'll be dealing with those that come in live. So first question is, if my business is closed at the moment, what funding can I apply for? Neil, do you want to?
So the council's funding regime has been in place now for over 6 months. Well, since we started with the phased lockdowns, so we've got the COVID support grants and the assisted recovery grants, and they are being paid to people to businesses that have applied for those, and they're automatically being carried forward. So as we come on the phased lockdown, those payments will continue to all businesses applied. The assisted recovery grant scheme is due to close at the end of March, and members are making a decision on that next week at executive. We will obviously then continue those payments through to the end of the roadmap on lockdown. So if you have applied already, you will continue to get your payments, and the closing date for the assisted recovery grant is going to be the 31st of March.
Right, thanks for that. Carolyn and Amanda, would you like to take the question, what support can I access for my business other than grants? I appreciate there's quite a lot of support out there. Carolyn.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say to all businesses who are listening is that there is a lot of support out there. So the first thing to do, of course, is to look for it and ask for it, because there's lots of different organisations across the city, like ourselves, like Federation of Small Businesses, who are offering that. So you've got Institute of Directors, you've got the Chambers as well as FSB, and we'll share in the chat some links to our COVID help, which is free to all businesses. You've also got the local enterprise partnership support and business advisors through Make It York. And I would say to businesses as well, there's trading standards at the council who are really engaged with businesses over reopening. If you have any anxieties at all, the team at City of York are really approachable and to use those resources all around you. And then, of course, you've got the colleges and the university. Amanda, maybe you'd like to come in and add your special offers.
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. Yes, I think not only the University of York, but University of York St John and the colleges all have a range of training and other support that we're offering for businesses. I know at the University of York we have a number of free online programs really designed to help people through this period of time in the way that many organisations are pivoting their business, moving more online, etc. We've got serviced office space at subsidised rates. We've also got the opportunity to engage groups of our students who will go in and do specific projects, kind of short-term consultancy projects, helping a business, for example, moving on to online marketing or accessing international markets. So there is lots of support around. And as Carolyn says, it's asking for it. We've put some websites, web links up in the chat. There's plenty of accessible training, support, mentoring, coaching, etc. around. So do take advantage of it, because it's great.
Thank you very much for those updates, and it's useful for people to access those additional services that are there to help. Coming back to what our City of York Council doing to help businesses that are struggling, Nigel, do you want to give an update on where we are with that?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Obviously, the council's been probably at the forefront of a lot of the responses that we've done, along with the business sector. So one of the most important parts that my department has been doing in particular has been paying out those grants and applying those rate reliefs. So about £150 million worth of financial support has gone out to local businesses. So that's been getting that 0% rate relief across to make sure people are not having to pay those business rates, but also getting those lockdown restriction grants that Neil referred to earlier being paid. So those businesses that have already applied have been accepted for those. They will be getting those paid on a regular basis. It has been a little bit confusing for people. I will appreciate that, as those grants are on a fortnightly basis, but the government are paying them on a sort of 40 to 45 day period. So obviously the period from 5th of January to the 15th of February was processed much earlier in the year. That period that carried on from the 16th of February running all the way through to the 31st of March was only received by the local authority last Friday. And so we've been processing that as quickly as possible. And I would hope by 11th of March today that all of that money to carry through until the 31st of March should have been hitting into people's bank accounts at the moment. So they don't actually have to do anything to do that. If you've already applied and already been accepted, we'll be getting those out and getting that paid through. We've also been doing a significant work with our partners across the pandemic to see how we can respond as a city to the challenges. So especially during last summer, there's a lot of work we did in terms of how we can open up the city centre and make it a place where businesses can still trade under existing restrictions. And we will be looking to do some of that going forward as we go through the roadmap. We've also been trying to make sure we've got as much support into businesses. So that would include things such as free local advertising. As I mentioned, the sort of the pavement cafe licenses that we've been processing. We did run our own small grant scheme. We did acknowledge very early on in the pandemic that there were a significant number of businesses that were not eligible for some of those government supports. So we put £1 million of our own money into that one, which helped us to support some of the smaller businesses, still fully accepting there are, I think, estimated millions of people nationally that aren't receiving any of that support. And I know yourself, Councillor Waller, and may as well have been lobbying government to try and get some of that support across there. We've also been doing as much as we can to get information out. And also one of the key issues is supporting people's mental health. So I think that gives a little bit of a flavour of the work we've been able to do so far.
Right, thanks very much for that. And just looking at the areas that still need support, and will receive continued lobbying. Carolyn, did you want to touch on some of the sectors that are still in need of support and that you're leading a cause for?
Yeah, so there has been, real lifelines to business from government, both locally with your own programme and with the central government funding. Obviously, a lot of sectors being helped, but we're still lobbying very hard on behalf of company directors who have missed out on support again in the latest announcements. We've put forward a scheme called DIS, Directors Income Support Scheme, which mirrors the self-employed income support scheme. Unfortunately not accepted in the budget, but it doesn't mean that we've stopped asking on behalf of businesses. And I see a lot of gaps still in the supply chain, really. We've seen the frontline businesses given meaningful support, really, in retail and hospitality, but their supply chains haven't been helped. And one industry I think that maybe has suffered really quite a lot and is really important to York is the wedding industry, and that really illustrates that supply chain issue. Your wedding photographers, makeup artists, hairdressers, etc., who haven't really been in line for support. So lots of gaps still, lots been achieved, and we are still obviously campaigning on behalf of those businesses and self-employed people to have some of those gaps filled. And I think one of the worries as well is about access to finance for small businesses, the bounce back loans, the CBILS loans, the emergency funding offered by government was really helpful in the early days of the pandemic, but really for a lot of businesses that money's already run out now. So we need to look at that as a flexible scheme. There's been proposals put forward for that as well. So we're still working on things, lots to do.
I think, yes, thank you for that. There's been a lot of joint working between the two of us over the recent months, and we will continue as an authority to take up the case of businesses that get in touch with us. We have been pushing the email address economicgrowth@york.gov.uk as a way of letting us know if you are in a sector that has been excluded from support, and we'll continue to make the case along with partners. I know the Chamber of Commerce have also been doing some work on that, and the Institute of Directors. So it's recognising that government has had to respond very quickly, but also it's a period where businesses are running very low on reserves, and Carolyn, as you mentioned, there are people not directly in the front line of closed businesses, but they are supply chain, and they're very much caught up in their customers being closed. Just to prove that we are a live show, we have a question about is there a plan for the roads to be sorted out this year? Some of them are awful. As a cyclist, I do report a lot of potholes in as I go around. So Nigel and then Neil.
Like obviously probably Neil will know more about the technicalities than I do from a finance background, but I can talk you through some of the finance. I think obviously we are under significant amount of pressures, and I think this is a time both you and I, as people who've been ward councillors for some time, Andrew, do tend to notice probably the highest level of complaints as we come out of that sort of very cold winter snap, which does have a really adverse effect on our road surfaces. And it is the point of the year when it really does bring it into key focus for everybody. But I think to reassure people that we are investing, I believe, the next 5 years is the largest scale of investment in our road highways. So £40 million over the next 5 years will be put into the capital investment into our roads. That's an increase of nearly £15 million from where we were in 2019-2020, an increase in £5 million on what was proposed from last year. So despite the fact these are very difficult times, we do recognise the importance of investing in our infrastructure, and there will obviously be much larger investment in infrastructure, including the York Outer Ring Road progress that we're making. But yes, getting that right in terms of making sure our road surfaces are safe and usable for our residents is one of our key priorities, and we are making sure with what resources we have that we do invest in them as much as we can.
So thank you for the finance answer. Neil, do you want to cover the actual action on the ground?
Yeah, action on the ground. So as Councillor Ayre has noted, we had a very wet period this year, followed by some severe frosts over an extended period, which has a devastating impact on tarmac Adam roads across the whole country, not just here in York. So it's a programme that we have on an annual basis. We're currently considering next year's programme, using the allocated money that Councillor Ayre has just referred to. And that annual highway maintenance programme should be announced early April. Officers are working on a prioritisation basis of those roads that are in the worst condition in the city. So we make sure that we deal with those roads first, and then obviously there's a quite significant proportion of that highways funding is also allocated on a ward basis to ensure that we get a fair spread of that allocation of maintenance money across the whole city. It's not just also about highways in terms of potholes, it's also about gully maintenance. Winter with heavy rainfall, the number of road flooding incidents has dropped over the years, over the last 5 years within the city, thanks to the investment made by your councillors in respect of additional capital going into the gully arrangements across the city. We've been undertaking reviews of all the gullies, making sure that they are all running, and where they aren't, we've got a programme for putting them back into a workable condition. So yes, we recognise it's an ongoing affair. It is a bit like the Forth Bridge. We will never complete the highway maintenance schedule. It will be ongoing for as long as there's roads.
Thank you very much for that, and it will be something that we will return to as an ongoing basis, but information will be put out there, and some of the deep potholes have been filled in an emergency, but recognising longer term investment will be welcome. So just continuing on the theme of finance, so question to Nigel is, what does the budget announcement mean for my business?
Thank you, Andrew. And just before I go into that, I did forget to mention, and the others as well, that one of the things that we introduce as an administration is localised ward funding to deal with highways issues. So I would stress that people, if they have particular issues that aren't part of that wider capital programme, they can contact their ward councillors, who can then look to do some of that smaller localised work to really get into those bits that hit that. But I think the question was about the budget announcement, and I think it's probably one of the most eagerly anticipated budget announcements that we came. And I think, as often happens with these, there were as many questions as there were answers to what will be going forward as we go into the next phase of the roadmap. I think some of the more reassuring things were that we will see furlough continue through to September, so that level of support for people in work will continue. There was the announcement that the self-employment scheme will continue, which I think was something that those individuals haven't been receiving payment, I think, since the middle of March. So that has been confirmed that funding will continue. However, I think I'm right in saying, Andrew, that still the application process for that hasn't been announced. And so
that's true. Some
of those individuals who I say haven't been paid through since the middle of February, I think, are still waiting to find out how and when they will be able to access that support.
So we'll send that out in the business bulletin when the details become available.
One of the things that my team have been working really hard on, as the announcement came shortly just before the business rate bills were due to go out, was the very late announcement that there will be 100% rate relief running up until the end of June. So I think we've just about managed to turn that around in a sort of a 12-hour period to ensure that people are getting bills that show that they're not eligible for business rate relief. That was a huge effort in terms of redoing all the bills that we'd already probably prepared prior to the announcement, or was sitting on the announcement. So that does mean there will be rate relief through to the end of June, and then that will progress through to a 60% reduction for the rest of the year. So there will be a further billing cycle from the team that we've got that will actually progress people through. So there will be, I think, some communications we need to do to help businesses to understand this sort of complex landscape of budget announcements that we've been given.
So thank you on that. I think it's worth going over that business rate bill question, so that those businesses that are entitled to 100% rate relief between now and July, and then 66% off in the following period, that they will get separate bills.
Yes, So the initial bill will come through with the 0% rating, and then as we get through, as that runs out, assuming the roadmap is followed, obviously there will be potential change if the roadmap does deviate. If there's a deviation of a roadmap, I'm not sure if that's a thing, but if there's potential to do that, then we may change. But as it stands now,
the dates are the earliest point at which something could happen, with the need to have evidence before moving. Those dates might take longer. Carolyn, did you want to come in on a win for the FSB in the budget?
Yeah, we were very pleased, of course, to see the so-called newly self-employed included into the self-employed income support scheme. So this was businesses less than a year old who were formerly a huge gap and lacking in support. So that was a really strong win for everyone. And also, just to mention, in addition to the things that Councillor Ayres already mentioned, was the VAT as well, the VAT extension for hospitality, which has been really welcomed by York businesses as well. So that 5% VAT, and then also followed by a slightly complex scheme, which we have more information on in our COVID hub for people to look at.
Right, that neatly brings us on to the question about what will be happening in the city centre with the reopening. And Neil, do you want to handle these stages that will occur? People will see that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andrew. So I think, as Councillor Waller's made very clear, the roadmap is effectively a best case scenario. So the government are taking a cautious approach to reopening the country, and equally the members have clearly expressed their view that they will be taking a cautious approach to reopening the city alongside that, and we'll come on to that later. But first of all, in terms of the steps, from the 8th of March, one person can meet outdoors, but the message is predominantly stay at home. From the 29th of March, rule of 6 outdoors, stay at home message ends, but it will remain a preference for people to stay local. The big change then comes on step 2 from the 12th of April, when seated services in pubs, restaurants and cafes and beer gardens will reopen, with the rule of 6 applying in those circumstances. There will be no need for a substantial meal. All shops, non-essential shops and essential shops will continue. All shops will reopen. Self-catering holiday venues will reopen throughout the UK for households. So just to be clear that is for households, that's not for mixing. Step 3, from the 17th of May, pubs will reopen fully with a rule of 6 indoors. Groups of up to 30 outdoors, so much more flexibility there on the outdoor space. Outdoor and indoor entertainment will be reopened with limits, and obviously there's many venues across the city in that regard. We'll be looking forward to that occasion. Hotels and bed and breakfasts will reopen across the city from the 17th of May, and again, so another key date in the diary for the city and for the residents in terms of welcoming people back to our city. From the 21st of June, all restrictions will end, with the potential for social distancing to end, and that will be a big key event when it comes to public transport, where obviously capacity on public transport, particularly the park and ride, has been very restricted over the last year. So again, welcoming people back to the city, but also hopefully allowing them to use our sustainable transport modes through the park and ride.
Thanks for that. And just completing this sequence of questions. So there's a question about what extra safety measures are going to be in place for the reopening. So I'll cover that in the sense that outdoor space is going to play a key role in helping people to stay safe when visiting the city. We're aware that once the government says that you can leave your home and travel within the country, that as an attractive destination, people will come to York. So we want to make sure that this is done in a controlled and safe way. And so utilising the experience from last summer, recognizing that there are pinch points within our medieval and Roman cityscape layout. So we'll be utilizing the COVID support marshals and replicating many of the things that worked last summer in the Be York campaign to really provide reassurance for people who are visiting, for residents who are popping into the city centre, so that people respect each other's space. And whilst social distancing may not be a legal requirement, I think there will still be a residual willingness or request for that to be observed and respected. So it's really about working with businesses to ensure that background level can be maintained. So Neil, where are the outdoor spaces that people could visit?
Yeah, so in terms of that reopening the city safely, that outdoor space is going to be key to effectively, as you say, Councillor Waller, to fulfil the need for people's natural inclination to maintain the social distancing. So we're looking at third-party managed spaces such as Dean's Garden, the Museum Gardens. We're looking for trader-led streets, so Castlegate, Fossgate, and possibly Micklegate. Certainly the traders on Castlegate and Fossgate last year thoroughly embraced the opportunity to use the highway space to add capacity and distancing space for their customers. There'll be trader-led squares such as King Square, St Sampson Square, St Helen Square, where the adjacent businesses will work with the BID and ourselves to effectively have expansive cafe license arrangements, again, to allow social distancing for their patrons. BID and CYC will be looking at spaces such as College Green, Parliament Street and the Shambles Market to put additional capacity in there for people to enjoy those bigger spaces across the city, particularly in College Green was proved incredibly successful last year. And then finally, we've got the wonderful riverscape that we've got here in the city of York. It's complemented by Tower Gardens, and again, just following last year's response into the reopening of the city. You know, the message would be for all patrons of the city: respect our city when you come to it. COVID marshals, as Councillor Waller has indicated, they're going to be considered to next week at the executive to continue right through till June. We will be working with the Department of Local Government in respect of their behavioural unit, looking at how we can make sure that we influence people when we came to the city. So the messaging that we put out last year, we're going to continue with that, but we're also going to look at possible variations to see how we can have maximum impact to encourage people to behave more respectfully when they come to the city, both to the city itself, but also to each other.
Right, thank you for that. And there'll be some money from government has been held back for the provision of facilities to help respond to the visitor numbers. So the ubiquitous issue about toilets will be dealt with, and we're encouraging people to make sure they utilise the bins or take their litter home. And on that front, there's been a question in relation to recycling. So suggestion about providing an extra bin. This is from Jane. Do you want to pick up that question, Nigel, about the consultation for changes to recycling?
A very impressive segue there, Councillor Waller. I think it's something you could do professionally. I think putting me on the spot as the former executive member in charge of recycling with the director in charge of recycling. So I shall see if I can do the topic justice. Yeah, I think it's good to know. A lot of times we wonder how much coverage our council meetings actually get. And it was on one of our executive members who was looking at improving recycling last week. I think it was Neil, and that was one of the options. So yes, we are very conscious that some time ago, I think it was your tutelage, Councillor Waller, we did see a massive step change in the amount of recycling that was done in the city, from probably about 20% up to around about the 50% mark. But since that point, we really do seem to have started to plateau in terms of how we can actually start to drive up that recycling. So we have been looking for some time about what is that next big step that will allow us to do that. and working with residents in terms of how we can improve that experience. So I think, as the commenter on Facebook has said, one of those options we've looked at is potentially around whether we can provide additional sized containers that would take some of that. So we have listened to residents, some of the comments they make in terms of the issues with boxes. I know, for example, elderly residents, for example, people who are partially sighted, etc., have always had a history with this. So looking at whether the containers we have are the right containers, but it's very much a commitment to keeping the level of service that we're doing, but looking at how we can improve that. So Councillor Widdowson, as the exec member, has taken forward a few options looking at things about increasing containers. That will now go to a scrutiny committee, and for those who are outside the Guildhall bubble, that's a group of cross-party councillors who will be able to give a little bit of time to look at that and really get a consensus on what options might be best for residents. That will then go out to some level of public consultation, and we'll see about what it is that we can do to uplift that recycling. But certainly those ideas that Jane is mentioning are ones that we're looking at. And I think a lot of those conversations about cross-contamination, I think it's important to know that, and I'm sure Neil would say, yes, while we probably can collect everything in one bin, that's literally from a collection point of view, we could turn up and do that. That doesn't necessarily mean we can then recycle those. So what is important is that the things that need to be recycled separately are kept separate, or that we can separate them at the end of the process. So glass and tins, for example, I learned about magnets back in my school days, I think, at the time of that, when recycling was first coming out. And I remember we were all given little magnets that you could put on your can of Coke to see whether it was recyclable or not. And I think that there is technology that allows us to separate some of those things, but paper, for example, mixing paper with broken glass is something that will never be able to be separated once it gets to the end. So I think the key is about the separation at either beginning or end and how we can do that. But I'm sure you'll tell me I'm completely wrong, Councillor.
Okay, thank you very much for that. It shows that whatever the discussions, you can never get away from recycling and potholes in a council discussion. But as we're focusing on business and skills today, just coming back onto the skills and training agendas, there's been a question: what support and training can I access for my business at the moment, and how can I access it? There's a number of web pages available, and we do put as much information as possible on the council website, and there are weekly bulletin updates. So there is the new recruitment incentive grant for New Start employee apprentices, which has been increased from £3,000, which means that for a 16 to 18-year-old or an under 25 with an educational healthcare plan or care leaver, they get an additional £1,000 support. That's bringing it to £4,000 in total, and it's available from the 1st of April until the 30th of September. But there are a wide range of options available. So Amanda, did you want to come in with some of the support and training, and then Carolyn after Amanda's had the opportunity?
Yes, thank you. As mentioned earlier, that there is a wide range of training available, and there's a lot of funded training out there at the moment. So there's peer-to-peer networking for small business owners, where they can engage through kind of facilitated networking with one another to talk about the issues they're facing and to work through the challenges together. There's a programme called Skill Support for the Workforce, which is covering a wide range of subsidised training, all designed to provide skills, building staff resilience, building business resilience, health and well-being, and helping businesses look at succession planning and how they move forward. Alongside that, some of you may be interested to know that we're developing the next 10-year city skills strategy at the moment, and we're really keen that the voice of business is heard in that strategy. So if there are businesses out there who are interested in helping us shape that strategy, we're really keen to make sure that the new strategy meets the current training needs that people have and also addresses future business training needs. So I think if you want to know any more about the existing training available or help shape the new skills strategy, then we'll put an email for me in the email chat, and please just get in touch. More than keen to help and support businesses in that way.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Carolyn?
I think one of the great things that's come from COVID, if we can say that there's good things that have come from it, is that a lot of training now is accessible online. So there's lots of bite-sized training. So even the smallest business can access lots of free help. So there's webinars. You know, we're running quite a lot of training webinars, and we have our own skills hub at FSB as well, but also the local enterprise partnership, the university. There's been some fantastic online programs. And if you don't know where to look for those, please ask, because I'm sure any of us would help you to find them. And the other thing I would say is that it's really important that we big up what we've got in York, because we have lots of training companies in York who are doing international training even, and you often don't look on your doorstep for things. So I would encourage people to look at their training needs within their business and then see if there's a local provider who can help them, and you no longer have to travel for that. You know, it doesn't really matter, but it would be nice to see York businesses who provide training supported. Amanda mentioned skill support for the workforce. That's an excellent program. There's others as well. The York and North Yorkshire LEP have just launched a programme specifically for women in enterprise with a £1 million investment. So please look around. It's the same as the business support. If you don't ask and you don't look for it, you often don't realise what's on your doorstep. And there is a really wide range of training available. There's also, as Amanda said, free training available or funded. The Supply Chain Network are doing lots of really good supported courses at the moment. So, you know, it's all there. It's just sometimes difficult to navigate as a small business, or if your head's down and you're looking at what you're doing day to day in your business. And I think businesses need to think of training as essential, not just for their employees, because that's often covered, but for the business owner as well. So I would really encourage businesses to use this COVID time to look at their training needs within their business and what's out there, so that they can upskill and be ready for the next challenge, whatever that brings.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, Councillor Waller,
Amanda's got something, right?
Sorry, just to add on to Carolyn about the fact that when staff are on furlough that they can be trained. I think it is really important that it's a really good motivational process for staff that are on furlough to get access to some training while they're off. So
yes, I think that's an important feature, that it helps people to upskill and also get around to doing those courses that they meant to before COVID, and now they have the opportunity. There's a wide range of websites and email addresses available, and I think the key thing from today is please ask. There are no daft questions. We are giving you permission to ask, and there may be the opportunity that you haven't even thought there might be support or a grant for what it is that you're trying to do. But there's plenty of people who are prepared to listen and to help guide you through this. There is a question on apprenticeships, and we've touched on that earlier, but that's certainly worth looking for, either as a business, whether some role that you're thinking about developing, and you've taken the time that you've been forced to sit at home to calibrate your business. And there are guidance on the City of York Council website. There's an apprenticeship page, but also the Make It York Skills Hub, which is useful for either young people who are looking for apprenticeships, and their apprenticeships are available for older people as well, and a wide range of courses that would be covered by that. And it's something that we have as an authority been arguing with government, that more access to the apprentice levy would open up more opportunity for all, and particularly at a time when I think everyone on the call is conscious of the stresses that 18 to 24-year-olds in particular are feeling, that they're at a critical time in their careers. They are at a disadvantage to earlier age groups. Right, so just coming on to well-being and support. It's something that's been raised on a number of discussions that I've either been on or seen, that people are recognizing that their own workforce, many of whom have been in this position for getting on for a year now, are in need of support. So Carolyn, do you want to talk through some of the things that are available through your organisation?
Definitely, and mental well-being is just as important as physical well-being, and it's something we talk about a lot with small business owners. So it's really important, and I think we've shared the link to our campaign, which is called "It's Okay to Talk About Mental Health," in the bulletin, because a lot of people don't want to speak to it about it at work. They may be more open with their friends, and our message to business owners and to employees as well is to have that conversation, to speak to their network, whether it's their boss or their colleagues or they're within the workplace. We want it to be an open conversation. So there is a link there, and there's lots of resources there as well if people want to look at resources in private rather than openly talking about it. A first step is to look at the resources available. And I think, if you're talking to your peer networks and going along to online networking or something like that, this conversation does come up, and people are speaking about it. So that's good. And of course, organisations like Federation of Small Businesses, our colleagues at the Chambers, Make It York, all those organisations have resources available. So again, it's a matter of seeking out what fits best for you. And really, the main thing is to talk and not be isolated. It can be really isolating being a small business owner, especially now as we're all online and you sat at home in front of your screen thinking, problems with finances, problems with my business, where are my customers, what am I going to do about reopening? A lot of the problems we've talked about on this event, really. You don't need to worry about that alone, because there are resources and people out there who will help you. And we've pointed to some of those resources today. And I think the Feel Real York campaign brings a lot of that together, which is excellent. And I know it's really important to City of York, because we've had those conversations within the partner group as well. So let's have that conversation.
Thanks very much for that, Carolyn. And as an authority, we have allocated £25,000 funding to work with the universities and partners to develop some York business specific emotional health support, and be publishing that in the next couple of weeks. So just on the same theme, to Nigel, what can I do to help support myself and my team's well-being?
I think just echoing what Carolyn said, really, it's emotional health is one of those things that we often don't pay as much attention to as we probably should, and it's probably one of the most important things. I think, having worked in that field for some time, I always go by the mandate: there's no health without mental health. So actually making sure you're mentally well, make sure that you're actually able to be physically well. So again, as Carolyn said, just make sure that you are reaching out and using all the resources that you possibly can. So we have the livewellyork.co.uk website, which talks you through and gives you lots of advice and support. And I know we're working really closely with the NHS, the Tees Esconway Valley Foundation Trust, as well as Ayre Services and Recovery College Online, and really our third sector partners, really important in helping to live in that. And I think it was one of the key areas that we highlighted in our budget process of how we could do something to address that. So we did actually put a significant something, £250,000 into our budget this year to make sure there is about 2 years worth of support, additional support for people with low level mental health, and we'll be looking to roll that one out. And also support for carers, who at the time will be doing a significant amount of work to help those people close to them, and making sure that they also have the level of emotional support that they need to help them continue to do the really important work they're doing.
Okay, thank you for that. And on the issue of support and teams, is there something that Councillor Ayre, you would like to say as an update on the stadium?
I just want to take this opportunity as it's happening this evening. So unfortunately, we had the first football game took place. It was also the last football game that took place behind closed doors at the new stadium. But just to wish the best of luck at York City Knights, our fellow partners will be embarking on their first ever game at the LNER Community Stadium this evening. Hull FC are playing 7:30 kickoff, I believe. Unfortunately, as I say, people will not be able to attend the game. I believe it's live streamed, but just to wish them all the best of luck. And I think hopefully we're backing them to push forward and get into Super League this season and really start to put York even further on the map from a sporting sense.
Thank you. And the community staging is playing its part in the community testing program. which is
Yeah,
being.
I think that was one of the things we were keen to do when we set out on that community stadium project, is to make sure that it is a building that is of genuine community use and not just a sporting venue. So we have been able to repurpose some of the leisure estate, which unfortunately at the moment is not being able to be utilised to do that work that we need from the NHS. And I understand also the NHS will soon be able to take their space up inside the East Stand, and the outpatient services there will be coming forward. So it really is starting to become a key part of the city.
Thank you for that. And whilst Amanda's on the call, just like to thank the University of York, recognising that University of York St John have also been providing space within their facilities for testing, and there has been support from volunteers from the student body to assist with that taking place, and it's been a very key aspect of responding to reducing the rates of the virus across the city. As we're coming towards the end of the session, just want to give Carolyn and Amanda the opportunity to give a plug for any events or programs that they are running that we haven't already covered, because I appreciate there's a lot of ground that we've been meeting very regularly, and there's a lot of things that are being developed to help with the recovery. So Carolyn, do you want to
yeah, I'd really like to mention the work we've done with the Good Business Charter, which is really important. And I know Amanda, the university, have signed up to that charter as well. FSB have worked quite a lot with Good Business Charter to make it accessible for small businesses. And I think it's a really exciting way for businesses to give themselves a little competitive advantage on reopening. So again, I can share a link to that. We have some resources online. If you look at the FSB website, fsb.org.uk/GBC, I think I'll find the link so that we can share it. But the Good Business Charter talks about what good work businesses are doing, and allows them to sort of frame that and get accreditation for it. So it's a really exciting thing to be part of. So I'd like to just highlight that as another opportunity.
Thank you for that, Amanda.
Thank you. I think I've mentioned a lot of the training, and obviously if you go to either our website or contact by email, you can find a lot more information. I think the other thing just to raise is that we're just launching our summer internship program at the university. So if businesses are looking for some short-term support from kind of high quality graduates who can come in, work alongside the organisation virtually or hopefully in the actual company itself, then again, please do get in touch, because our students love the opportunity to work with our local businesses, and businesses really have valued the input and the outputs of our students working alongside them for up to 8 weeks. I think it's maybe even up to 12 weeks. So it's a good length of time. It gives the chance for businesses to really benefit from the work that the students do, and it gives our students a fantastic opportunity to get to grips with some really interesting business problems and work alongside the business to solve those issues. So that would be my final plug, I think.
Thank you very much for that. Neil, did you want to come in before?
Yeah, I just want to plug an event on your behalf, Councillor Waller. So next week, Councillor Waller will be chairing on behalf of the City Council a Traders Associations and Small Business Roundtable. So what we're very keen from a city perspective is not just about the city centre, it's about the whole city. We want to understand what you would like us to do on your behalf across the whole city to help you and your businesses reopen. So that Traders Association Small Businesses Roundtable is available and open for booking on Eventbrite. It's between 1 and 2:30 next week, Thursday the 25th of March. So looking for some interesting dialogue between yourself, Councillor Waller, and our traders associations across the city.
Thank you very much for that. Nigel, is there anything?
I think I've said most. I say the one thing I'd probably flag at the end, as was mentioned at the beginning, the additional restrictions grant, which is those grants that are available for those businesses that didn't get any of the national government grants, does close on the 31st of March. So would urge anybody who has not received support and thinks that they may be entitled to get in touch in the next sort of week or so. We can try and make sure those are processed before those grants close.
Thank you for that, and I think it's worth paying tribute to the teams who worked diligently to process those. I appreciate that there have been a lot of applications, but we have passported, sent through as much money as has come from government, and that's been very much the way that we've operated, so as we recognise through partners that businesses have needed that support, and that there are always instances where people have appreciated that level of investment just at a critical time. So having run round everyone, what I'd like to do is to thank you all for your time. It's been a valuable experience in exchanging information and working together. So I'll just say, keep an eye open across social media channels as we're promoting more Q&A to keep you up to date and the opportunity to ask us questions. The processes are on the websites, and all of the links that have been quoted today will be put on the Facebook live session. And I would encourage everyone to look at those. If there are questions that have come in that we haven't answered, then people will ensure that there's a response within 24 hours to those. So thank you for joining us, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay.